Are all plants struggling in the wintertime? No, they're not. There are actually, believe it or not, some plants that do well in the wintertime and actually like the cooler temperatures. Houseplants. Absolutely. Hello, I am Lauren, that awkward plant girl. Welcome back to my channel. It's so good to see you guys. Thank you guys for popping in. We're going to talk about 5 houseplants that do well in the winter, and let's get into it. This first plant is going to surprise a lot of people. Ceropegia woodii, string of hearts. Variegated string of hearts, most Ceropegia. Most people think because this plant is so thin-stemmed and so particular in other aspects of its life that it would be very particular to cold temperatures as well. It's actually not. It grows in South Africa up in the mountains, so it's actually frost tolerant. It's one of the very few houseplants out there that is frost tolerant to some extent. That doesn't mean toss it out in -10-degree weather or anything like that, but it is up in mountains. It does get snowed on and it is cold tolerant. It even blooms in the wintertime to some extent. So depending on the specific variety of Ceropegia. Ceropegia woodii tends to bloom for me in January and February. So it's very, very awesome. Definitely a plant that you can put closer to a window. You can leave it out on your porch a little bit longer. The reduced lighting is what they struggle with in wintertime more than anything else, but it's not the colder temperatures. They can handle cold. So if you have a particular room in your house that are colder than others, you can put that particular plant in there. Ceropegia will do well, provided you can give them the lighting. Next up is peperomia. Most peperomia, not all peperomia, can survive cooler temperatures just fine. Peperomia are one of those plants that when the lighting is reduced and the temperature is cool, they tend to bloom in the wintertime. Their growth is a little bit slower, but they handle the cold temperatures just fine. They're not going to drop all of their leaves and freak out because it got a little colder. They can handle the cooler temps. They're from Brazil. They're from the rainforest in Brazil, so those are like 50 and 60 degree temperatures, can kind of drop down in the 40s. They're not frost tolerant though, but they are more cold tolerant than most houseplants. And you'll find that they tend to bloom in the wintertime. You'll see that they're growing their little rat tails in the wintertime. You'll see that they'll start to have little baby leaves. For them, you need to keep the humidity up. If it's cooler and humid, then they can handle that. And they still grow really well, which is really awesome to see. If you have a colder area or you're worried about your peperomia in your terrariums not doing so well, that is one that's going to do awesome for you even in the wintertime. This has to be one of the most beautiful cold tolerant plants out there, Tradescantia. They have the most amazing freaking leaves. They are not advertised as frost hardy, but I actually left a large one with thick chunky leaves out on my porch and it frosted overnight. It got down in, you know, the low 30s. I think it was like 29, 30 degrees. So it wasn't super frost. It wasn't snowed on or anything, but it handled it really well. I brought it in the next day. There was no leaf loss, no leaf damage. It's still thriving in my living room, no problems. I knew that they were cold tolerant, but I didn't know that they were that cold tolerant, and that was really cool to see. I always keep them in my living room and my bathroom because those are two of the coldest places in my house. I'd say they get in the low 40s, upper 30s almost every single night in the wintertime. And my Tradescantia have done really well the last couple of years in those locations. So I already knew that they were pretty cold hardy, and I tested out the frost hardiness with that this year on accident, and it was really nice and comforting to know that it can handle that. Now, I don't recommend that doing with like a little baby plant or a thin-leaved Tradescantia. This was a big mature chunk of plant. So bigger plants are going to be able to handle more variety of conditions than smaller plants. Smaller plants tend to be less tolerant. Tradescantia are very, very light loving though, so they won't do so well in the wintertime if you put them in the deep dark corner and don't give them a lot of light. If you keep them in the cold with a grow light right above them, or you put them next to a cold window, they'll be perfectly fine. I have them in my windows downstairs in my living room. They thrive every year. It does so well. So Tradescantia are very cold tolerant plants, especially for houseplants. Very spectacular, totally slept on. So this next one is slept on as well, ferns. I actually live in Washington State. I have ferns everywhere. I love ferns so much that I started bringing them inside as one of my first houseplants as an adult in this house. They're so freaking amazing. I wanted to turn my living room into a little fairy forest and basically bring the outside inside, so I got a bunch of ferns everywhere. And it was an education, let me tell you. It really was, because so much information about ferns out there is absolutely wrong. It's just not even There's so much to go into. I have other videos on that, so you could check those out if you want. But essentially, what I have learned being in Washington State surrounded by ferns is that ferns can be invasive. Ferns can be incredibly cold hardy. I have seen ferns out here. They don't all go dormant. They will literally stay big and bushy and then have the snow fall on them and then plop back up and grow new growth in springtime just fine. Ferns are not weaklings. There are hundreds and hundreds of varieties of ferns out there, and they live in all different kinds of conditions. They're one of the oldest plant species in the entire world. It's so freaking cool. Your ferns in your home are going to be more cold tolerant than pretty much any other houseplants, depending on the specific ferns that you have. There are specific tropical ferns out there that absolutely need, like a bird's nest fern is going to need a little bit more humidity and warmth than, say, a Boston fern. A Boston fern is going to be able to handle cold pretty well. Not all ferns are going to be frost hardy, just like not all ferns need humidity. There are desert ferns out there, just like there are tropical rainforest ferns and there are forest ferns. There's a whole variety out there. So make sure when you're getting your ferns, you're researching the specific type of ferns. Maidenhair ferns and Boston ferns, anything along those lines tend to be more cold hardy because they grow in a naturally cold climate, much more than a lot of the other tropical thick-leaved ferns out there. So if you're considering putting plants in a cooler room, definitely take a look at your ferns because there is going to be species and varieties out there that are going to be so cold tolerant it will blow your mind. And last but not least, Hoya. You guys know that I love my Hoya. My Hoya are my babies. They're absolutely freaking amazing. It depends on the specific type of Hoya though. A lot of Hoya are very cold tolerant, not frost tolerant, but very cold tolerant. So they can handle those 40s and 50s. They're not going to be freezing temperatures. Don't be throwing them in your freezer at 32 degrees or leaving them on your porch for the frost times. I brought mine in. There are Hoya that grow in the wintertime that prefer the cooler temperatures. They grow up in the forests, up on the trees and rainforests and whatnot. They're spread all across the globe, so they acclimate anywhere from Asia to Brazil, like the climate differences there. They handle all of that. So there are different species of Hoya that can handle a different variety of temperatures. Hoya bella doesn't handle heat so well. It actually does better in the cooler temperatures. Hoya australis is another one that does better in the wintertime for the most part. My Hoya pubicalis is not affected by cooler or warmer temperatures really. It grows a little bit better in the warmer temperatures, but not so much. So definitely play around with your Hoya. They're all very cold tolerant for the most part. There may be some more rare Hoya that I don't have access to that are going to prefer warmer climates, but I have yet to find a Hoya that's going to pass on me in the wintertime because of the cooler temperatures. Poor lighting, absolutely, because there are Hoya out there that need the lighting, but for the most part, you can safely get a Hoya and put it in a cooler room in 40 to 50 degree temperatures. It may grow, it may not grow, depending on if it prefers the cooler temperatures or not. But it's going to be fine in that location, especially if they are a thicker leaved Hoya as opposed to a thinner leaved Hoya. If you're struggling to care for your houseplants in the wintertime, you found this video informative, I have other videos like this. You can check this one out right here. Drop your comments down below. If there are other plants that are cold tolerant that you know of that I forgot to mention, definitely drop them down so everybody can get kind of a list going. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!